What you are listening to is real. The parties involved are not cool. They are actual geeks with a case pending in the court of public opinion. The party's case has been dismissed, and the dispute will be settled here on our podcast. There will be no lawyers, there will be no witness testimony. The judge's decisions are final.
Hello, I'm Judge Ivan.
I'm Judge Jonathan, and this is Geeks on Trial. Today's case, a nerd by any other name.
Welcome to Geeks on Trial. This is the podcast where we settle petty disputes between actual geeks over movies, video games, board games, and so much more. If you'd like to submit your own geeky case for a future episode, you can email us at geeksontrial@gmail.com. You can also support the show over at patreon.com/geeksontrial for just a few bucks a month, and you'll gain early access to both our audio and our video episodes before they are released to the general public.
Ivan, I'm ready and raring to go for today's episode, but you know what's got me real pumped and excited this week?
What's got you pumped and going?
My good friend and
Mhm.
mentor, I consider him almost like an uncle to me,
Mhm.
director James Cameron.
Oh, Uncle James.
I'm I'm high on Uncle James this week, still from Avatar: The Way of Water, but also from coming off of the Titanic 25th anniversary 3D re-release, which we both watched in theaters. Oh, what a joy!
Oh, that was, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I always forget how long that movie is.
How can you forget? It's quite long.
It's
two VHS tapes.
It is two. It was weird that they didn't have the please insert next VHS tape on this version.
They swap them quick these days, the projectionists.
It's true. But I am still recovering from the headache from the 3D from that movie.
Does that happen to you? Does the 3D get you?
Not normally, but I think because this was an older film repurposed for 3D, some things kind of like triggered my headache because there is a flicker rate to it because it was filmed on film.
It could depend on the theater and the screen and the who knows. This is actually my second viewing because they already re-released Titanic in 3D like 6 or 7 years, 8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. I don't even know. I don't know why maybe it was the 15th anniversary.
Right.
But I enjoyed it both times. It's always fun and you get a little something else out of it. There's a lot of 90s like style in that movie in terms of the acting and the directing, but that's kind of James Cameron's thing.
There's also a few, like I had a few issues with some of the CGI, which I think I mentioned to you, because like you have to, in order to make a movie that was already a movie 3D, you have to add in certain elements. So like there were certain points where like the water, which was 3D, definitely looked after production, like a new CGI thing, which wasn't terrible, but for me, somebody who like I've done movie stuff, it's like it took me out for like a split second.
Most of it looked really good to me. The only thing I don't know if it was as much an effect of the 3D as much as it just was noticing how aged some of the CG is. There's just a couple times I thought pretty much the whole, sinking sequence looked great, but in the beginning there's a few times where they pan over the ship and clearly there's some people that are going like boop beep. They're like PlayStation 1 models.
Yeah. Like I feel like if you would have gotten close to it, they didn't have faces. Like it was that kind of like
Yeah. So I was like, yeah, don't look at that part too much. But if that movie had been made in 2003, it would have been like all CGI and it would look terrible now.
Right.
So at least thank God James Cameron at that time, I don't know, who knows how an Avatar will look in 30 years. Maybe it will be saying it looks terrible then too, but
the biggest thing, which was the boat on both issues, the CGI, like for some of the scenes where it was going past the screen, you can tell it's like, okay, somebody drew that real quick for a 3D model. Not every, like most of the scenes it looked spot on, but some of it you're like, okay, that is a CGI image of a boat driving by.
For me, a lot of people in my theater were scared when the Titanic came on. They ran out of the theater because they thought it was going to come out and hit them.
What did you see this in 1913
I
or whatever
for
that train
I
movie?
went back to the year the Titanic actually
Mhm,
sailed
mhm.
for authenticity. I have a time machine. I do that sometimes.
But I really, it was really enjoyable. I did because I haven't. That's not a movie that like I'll pop in and be like, oh, here's 3 hours and 15 minutes. I want to waste, not really waste, but like take up time
No,
for.
no. It's a valuable use of your time.
But I did see it on because I go to our AMC. It was $5 Tuesday discount Tuesdays, and it was still $20 a ticket.
Well, it would have been 40. Look at it this way, a ticket to the actual Titanic was probably like $500 and you died.
Right.
So you're making out with a better deal. I don't know how much a ticket to the Titanic was
I don't know,
actually.
probably like $10 back then. But who who was your favorite character in that movie? Because I have a
Definitely Fabrizio,
I loved
Jack
whoever
Dawson's friend,
Kathy
Fabrizio.
Bates'
Oh
character
yeah,
was.
she's great. She's a real lady. She's based on
Right.
a real lady from the
Yep.
Titanic, who's like
And I
well known.
and I looked it up later on because I'm always like, what parts of this movie are real and what are just kind of like
Yeah.
James Cameron. I don't think none of the stuff with the Rose was real.
No, 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 no. Yeah, the romance was all made up. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and the whole Hope Diamond thing. I'm sure there was like millions of dollars on that ship because they were on it for what, like they were supposed to be on it for like 3 months or whatever ridiculous amount of time. So
Mhm,
people
mhm.
brought everything with them.
It is it's wild. The things that the level of luxury on that ship
Yeah.
is mind-boggling. Like the fact that people were bringing paintings and they had like fine china and like a fireplace. You're
Right,
like
on a boat.
you're like, dear, this is a little bit out there. And if you want a little treat afterwards, I watched for the first time the James Cameron directed documentary called Ghosts of the Abyss
Hmm,
about them going underwater along with who does he take with him? Bill Paxton.
okay.
Uh, to check out the actual Titanic, which is it's an okay documentary. It's interesting.
Now, the footage that they have, like, when they're diving under in the submersible, is that real footage?
I think that it's either real or it looks exactly like the real footage.
Right, because I feel like
So
now if James Cameron were to make this movie or anybody, they would just make a new Titanic boat.
he would film it in the Titanic. He would
Right,
make every actor wear scuba gear,
right.
and then he would like digitally make it so that they were standing in oxygen, even though they were underwater throughout the whole entire filming.
And I also
I,
saw an image too of, like, because the Titanic was supposed to be such a massive boat for this time, but if you look at, like, a normal Carnival cruise of today, it's like a paddle boat, the Titanic,
yeah,
compared to these
yeah,
giant boats now.
yeah, yeah,
It was
yeah.
good. It
Boy,
was
things were different back then.
I'm assuming you didn't see original Titanic in theaters.
I did. I think didn't we just talked about this in one of our episodes because you said it was your first R-rated movie or something, and then I said no, it's not rated R. But yeah, no, I remember I was taken to this with my family. I saw it in the theaters.
Yeah, I saw it, but I didn't see it in theaters.
Right, 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 right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Vague memory, but a memory.
Also, looking back on how young Leonardo DiCaprio is, he
Just a
wouldn't
little
date
baby.
himself anymore.
That's right.
He aged out.
He's a little too old. He's a little too old. Now,
Yes,
Titanic maybe is not the geekiest movie. It's a pretty mainstream movie, but you can get geeky about it
it's true.
when you dive into the details, such as we did. But what we should get to the real geeky business, right? On today's episode,
It's true. What
we
is
have a
today's
case to
case?
settle.
Well,
Well, I'll give you a summary of today's case. It's all right. You can cut my audio, and your question will work just as well. I'll tell you, today's case comes to us from the internet. You can find a link in our episode description. And the subject of today's case is a man that we're going to call Romeo. So kind of fitting because Titanic, a little bit of a Romeo and Juliet story. Now, Romeo is the proud father of a beautiful 3-month-old daughter. And one day, Romeo finds himself explaining to his wife's aunt, or aunt if you prefer, the
Auntie.
origin of their daughter's name. Although there was, in fact, a lengthy process of determining this name, including a whiteboard, so you know they really got into it, Romeo reveals that the name originally occurred to him as it had appeared in a comic book. This revelation shocks both the aunt, auntie, and the wife, who feels betrayed for not having been told about the name's origin to begin with. Romeo claims he just, quote, wasn't thinking about it and didn't realize that he hadn't mentioned it to her in the first place. As dual judges here on Geeks on Trial, it's now our job to determine whether Romeo deserves blame for the name or if that would just be a shame.
I quit.
So there's a lot to unpack here, but before I think even we get to the name itself,
Mhm.
I think it makes sense to begin with the act of naming a child
Right.
and the practice of naming a child after something, say, from pop culture. And I wonder, as we've said before, neither of us have children that we know of,
Right.
but I wonder for you, Ivan, would you, were you to snatch a child off the street?
Which is how our people do it.
The
The gays
Irish?
the
Oh,
gays just walk into a mall and go, "Mine, take it and walk away."
right. Have I bet you have given thought to what you would name a child.
Well, there have been discussions and almost fights over just over names to, with me and my partner. He wanted to, go very pop culture related because my partner is a big Star Trek fan, and he wanted to name him or her him after Captain Kirk.
Okay, so James.
J- or yes, it could have been James, which is also my partner's grandfather's name. So that fine. But then he wanted to do the whole thing, James Tiberius, and I said absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
What would your is there a pop culture name you would like that you would go to, or would you not go to it?
Not really. I'm not really one to like I wouldn't do like what Kevin Smith did. And what is his daughter's name?
Harley, I'm not sure if I think she is the full Harley Quinn Smith.
Right. Like as somebody with a unique name myself, I wouldn't go too. Oh, I mean, my name's not crazy unique, but it's not like a Jonathan, for example.
It's different. It's
It's
sort of in the it's almost in the Conan range of
right,
yeah, it's not one you hear all the time
right. But
outside of
I,
Russia.
me, me personally, like I don't have a pop culture name because I don't have that pop culture. Like I don't have a Star Trek that I like is my thing because
Mm.
I have a vast array of things that I like. It's not
Mhm,
really
mhm.
one main thing, which I sure same with you. But do you have a name that you've thought about?
See, the thing for me is when it comes to pop culture names, that's I usually think of a pet.
Right.
Like, so I have 2 cats and their names are Kylo and Leia,
Hmm.
which is of course a Star Trek reference.
Oh,
I'm just waiting for the emails to come in off of that. That's how I get you, suckers. It's called fan engagement. Or before that, I had a cat named Harrison, who was named after Harrison Ford,
oh,
which could be a perfectly good name for a human baby is
right,
Harrison. That's like it's a man's name. It's not like, I think there's a very different line like James for James T. Kirk. I think that's good. Or even Luke, for example.
right,
That's almost like right in the middle where it's people will probably associate that with Luke Skywalker, but there's like it's a biblical name. It's not like Han, Han
right.
is where you've never heard it before.
Well, that would
I
be weird if we named a child Han. Uh,
because why?
go into a classroom. Han, please come to the front of the. That's all right.
It's a double. You get 2 for 1. By the
Right.
way, I like to point out sometimes that the last 3 letters of my name, Jonathan, are in fact Han. So theoretically, if people wanted to, they could call me Han as a nickname,
I'll
and that would
start
be
from
cool.
now on.
Cool. That would be cool. Great.
Okay.
I like no one's taken me up on that yet.
Right. Have you mentioned it to people?
We could be Han and Han. That could be
Sure.
our
Well,
our
we'd have to
our
that. A new podcast.
A new podcast, Han and
Yeah.
Han.
Han and Han.
People would love that. But where was I? Yeah, so there's like a line certainly of I don't know that I agree with there. I feel like there was a wave of Khaleesi's after Game of Thrones.
Okay.
There's a certain level where I think it's too far when the name really sounds like don't name your kid Kal-El. I think
Right.
didn't Russell Crowe maybe I'm making this up. I think Russell Crowe named his son Jor-El or Kal-El, which are
Eh,
Superman and his father.
right.
Um, I mean, which I don't know. I mean, it's cool. Like
It's
I
cool. Like,
respect it,
but then,
but
like, is your child going to like resent? Like, I don't. What if they don't like these movies? It's really
right,
it's an inside joke for the parents and not for the child.
like Harley Quinn. That's
That's
a very
very.
specific character type.
I could now. I could also see it for like a middle name. Middle name is kind of like you can do whatever you want because it's rare that some child is going to be called by their middle name. So, like, if you wanted to do like a normal like Steve and then do like a middle like a solo something, something ridiculous like that.
Steve, Kermit the Frog.
Yeah.
Kermit. What do you think about the name Kermit
I would
for a
punch a child in the face. If I met a child named Kermit, I'd be like, "Sorry, you're getting decked."
Fair, that's fair. I gotta tell you, I mean, I kind of loved James Tiberius Hahn.
Well, I said to him, I'm like, you could either have James or you could have Tiberius as the middle name. Because even Tiberius as a first name isn't terrible,
No,
but
I don't know
then
about that.
but then you get stuck with like Tibby,
But what I don't know what the origin is. Tiberius. That sounds like a Greek, an ancient Greek thing
probably.
or something. Like Gene Roddenberry got that from somewhere.
Right.
And that's the thing. Like a lot of these geeky names, as we'll get to, kind of have their origins in other things too, as opposed to just a whole cloth. Like, don't name your kid Voldemort. don't,
Right.
although that has Latin origins too. But I don't know. I'm trying to think of like don't name them Aragorn or Frodo or something,
Well,
or
and also
do maybe do. I don't know. I'm not like I wouldn't do it, and I feel like there's reasons not to do it. But
right.
if I did meet someone and they were like, "Hi, I'm Frodo," I would probably personally think that was kind of awesome.
Well, and there's also like like a quote like there has never been a president Frodo. Like it's always like you know what I'm saying? Like for like certain gigs, it's like certain
you're
jobs, it's like
you're dooming that child to be either an actor or a comedian or a musician or something like.
or a podcaster,
Yeah, that's certainly a fair argument to make. What about the name
that
Frankenstein?
what was that? What
Big
movie was that?
Daddy.
Big Daddy. Yeah.
When he lets the kid name himself.
Well, that's apparently like was a trend for a minute. Like people were like, "Oh yeah, we let our child name itself." No, do not give a child that kind of freedom.
I can see. Well, that was. I mean, and I forgive me if I'm just completely making things up right now, or I'm just repeating things that are not true, that are like myths. But I feel like it was been said that it was a Native American thing that like they would kind of get a name as they got older, like based on their personality, and I think that that's kind of can be cumbersome for a number of reasons in modern society because kids need to have like social security numbers and birth
Right.
certificates and stuff. They need to be organized and put into our system so they can be oppressed properly. But
Well,
there's something to be said for that.
this is another thing me and my partner were talking about is if you adopt a
My
child,
partner and I,
it oh you have
actually,
one
that
too?
it might actually be for I don't know. Go on.
If you adopt a child and they come with a name,
Mm.
is it okay to change said name?
I think it depends on how old they
How
are.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about too. Like
Yeah,
if they're
if
like
they're 15, sorry, you're Buckley now.
well, like I feel like if they're like 2 and under, you kind of have a little play with that.
Yeah,
But
even like yeah, 2 and under is probably 3 is
because they're
borderline.
starting to like know,
They
but
probably know their name at 3.
yeah.
Yeah. I even feel a little weird, but I have done it. I have renamed pets that I got, uh, and I don't you
Well,
know,
you had valid reasons for some of the names.
some of them, yeah, yeah.
So,
There's certain names, yeah. But Harrison came to me as Stinky.
right,
That was his given name by his former family, and I was like,
right.
no, no,
Nope,
no.
nope. Because if your cat gets out, you don't wanna be yelling down the hallway, "Stinky, come here, Stinky."
Yeah, that's a little bit
Right.
of a no no. So yeah, I'm kind of I think it's great if you and your partner spouse have a geekier origin for the name that you both agree on.
Right.
But I think the best option is to something that at least can sound somewhat neutral. Like James
Yeah.
is very neutral, but you could even push it a little. I'm trying to think of something like Luke. Maybe is a perfect example of like, you know, it's got a nerdy origin, but it's still a name. It's not
Right.
like everyone's going to see that kid and be like, oh, you must love American Horror Story. I don't know why
Right.
that's the first thing that came to
Yep,
my
that's the
head.
first the the critically acclaimed television show that should have ended 5 years ago.
A show I haven't watched in a decade. I don't know why. I don't know
So
why.
he if you look
Bart,
behind the camera, behind this curtain, there's posters, he has a cardboard cutout, he loves it.
I love it. I'm Ryan Murphy's number one fan. But what about
You said
Bart?
that.
Do you like Bart as an or
Bort
yeah, Bort?
Bort see, no, that's another weird thing because
Bartholomew?
like, those names are now so tightly associated with something where, like, Luke, I don't know, like, Bart doesn't seem like a real name to me.
No, right. Now there is another option, which is if you give them a geeky first name, you could give them a normal middle name. And if
Right,
at some point they decide they're not into that, maybe they go by their middle name.
and you disown him.
Yeah. That puts a lot of pressure on a kid in some ways. Like if you name your kid Clark after Clark Kent,
Right,
then you at some point they're going to be like, I got to live up to this guy.
right.
He's
Well, that's also
Superman.
if, like, they know what that is at that point.
Right. Well, at some point they're going to know what it is,
Right,
you know.
but I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
But I guess, like, the
It-
Superman stuff is always in pop culture because they're remaking those movies every year. But, you know, that kind of
yeah.
stuff. Now, do you have any weird names in your family that, like, come to mind, or is everything kind of, like, straight and narrow?
No, my family is extremely straight-laced. They're
Same with ours.
old-fashioned. Yeah. I don't even know anyone with an interesting name. It's all
You
it's
don't have
all
any
boring.
nobody named Apple or Sheet?
No. But
That
if
was
any
I
listeners are named Apple or Sheet, please
well,
be
that
my
was
friend.
I forgot which actress named their child Apple.
Oh yeah, Fiona, I think.
"Oh, your name is Apple Apple." It was Steve Jobs.
No, there was somebody though. Well, it wasn't Steve
Yeah.
Jobs, right? That was a joke, right? Or was it,
Yes, it was
right?
as a
Okay,
joke.
okay. Yeah, no, there was somebody who named their kid Apple. I don't
Right.
remember. Are you looking it up?
I am.
Just like I'm fairly confident about the Russell Crowe Jarrell thing.
Gwyneth
Uh,
Paltrow.
Gwyneth Paltrow. Doesn't maybe Bono have a weird kid? I
Well,
mean, his name is
his
weird.
name is weird, yeah.
His name is Bono, but that's a name that's not his given name, right? He adopted that persona at some point.
I don't know.
Anyway, could be named Sunny. Oh, you know what? I do have a. They'll never. This part of the family will never listen to this or know this
Who cares?
exists. I have a cousin. I guess my cousins have a. One of my cousins has a child whose name is Buster. That's true.
Now is Buster short for something?
Mm-mm.
I don't so Buster is Buster. Okay.
Like Buster Bluth or Buster Keaton or Buster Bunny.
Buster Brown, Buster
There's some Busters. There are some
It's not a
Busters.
terrible name, but now because it's in such pop culture
It just feels like it's maybe the name for a dog more than a child to
or
me.
like a middle name.
Maybe,
Like
maybe.
that's, you know,
But if you're like, I feel like if you're a Buster, you could be like a cool street talking newsy or something, or you're
right.
like a kid from Oliver Twist. Hey, governors, it's me, Buster.
That's another name I love. I love Oliver.
Or
But then
but if
everyone would think
Oh, Oliver's not bad.
Yeah.
That's a fun name. I do think if your name is Buster, though, you have to be wary if you're ever around Destiny's Child.
Why?
They don't they don't want none of that. A scrub, also known as a
Uh-huh.
busta.
I barely even
They
know her.
don't.
Now, so
Okay.
did they say what this was from?
Right, so let's get into the case itself. Now they do eventually it will be revealed. We will make it known on this episode what the name is and where its origin is. But we should talk about, I think, specifically the fact that if let's just say for some reason you had never been exposed to Star Trek
Okay.
and you had a child and its name was James,
Mhm.
and 3 months later someone asked, "Oh, where'd James come from?" and you discovered it was named after Captain Kirk.
Right.
Would you be upset?
No.
Not even a little bit?
No.
All right. Yeah, I
Because
mean, fair enough.
I it's also hard to think like you don't talk that out.
Right. Well, so apparently in this case, they talked it out thoroughly. But well, so it sounds like fr- from what we hear about this case, and maybe we should get into the specific name in a minute. Um, it's not as if this he was such a fan of this character that he wanted that name. It was more like he just heard the name for the first time there and liked the sound of it,
Right.
which is maybe a subtle but I think important distinction. Like if you heard, I don't know, I think like a song. I'm trying to think of a song. I don't know. You heard Alice's Restaurant, and you're like, Alice would be a good name for it.
Right.
But it's not like maybe you don't love that song. You just thought
It
the
was
name
just
had a good
in your
ring to it.
head, it was pop culture. Right.
So I
Like
think that's kind of the case here.
like he's not like a fanboy for whatever this was.
Right.
Okay.
And I feel almost a little weird like saying it because it's like a child's, I believe, real name. But this person willingly put this out there into the internet. We're not going to
You're right.
say we don't know their last name, we don't know where they live or anything like that. So it's still relatively anonymous.
Right.
But whoever this is, if they one day discover this, we try to reach out to these people, but they don't always respond
Sure.
in
We
these
do
early
our
episodes.
we do our background and we try to, make sure everything's on the up and up.
Yeah,
But
but at some point they may hear this and be like, "Hey, that's about me." This may be how they discover what their name is. Should we reveal it?
we should. What is the name?
The name is Laurel,
Okay.
Laurel,
Okay.
and the origin it is the Black Canary's, I believe, middle name. So Black Canary is a DC Comics character who fights and has powers that I don't remember off the top of my head. I think she makes her voice, she can like scream and sing at people and hurt them or something.
Now, I'm not up on all the comic-y stuff, but this isn't like a popular comic?
It's not like the most mainstream. I know of Black Canary from the animated Justice League cartoon that
Okay.
aired back in the day. I believe she's a member of the Birds of Prey, which is, and actually she might be. I think she was maybe in the Birds of Prey movie, if I
Mm,
recall correctly, which came out 5 or 6 years ago.
right.
Um, so she's certainly not like what I would call an A-lister in terms of comics, but if you are like a DC Comics fan, you probably know who she is.
Okay.
You might not know her middle name. I don't know how well known that is. So that's something too. It's not like he named the kid Black Canary. uh,
Right.
he went with not even their first name, the middle name. So that's it's like hidden under layers.
It is, and it's also like that's a real name.
It's not. I wouldn't say it's a common name.
No, it's unique. It's which is what they wanted. If you read into the story, like they didn't want a very common name, but they didn't want anything too crazy and deep. Which this kind of Laurel is a good name. Um, and it's I think it's unisex, both gendered.
Yeah, Laurel and Hardy.
Right. Was that their last names or was that their first
Yeah, no,
names?
that was their last
It was
names.
Stan Laurel. Yeah.
That's yeah, right, but still, but still, they went by. Yeah, I would think. I guess it leans a little more towards feminine in my head, just because it kind of sounds like Laura.
Right.
But and I guess generally it's like so the origin, by the way, as they went on to say, is like a laurel tree, which symbolizes victory, or at least it did in like ancient, I believe Greece. They say ancient Greece or Rome or something, which I know because you'll find this in a fair number of board games.
Mm.
If especially if it has some kind of an ancient theme to it, the victory point symbol will often be a little laurel wreath thing. That's the
Well, that's
little.
the thing that they put in like movie quotes for like they won an award, right? Is
Oh,
that?
that may be the can logo or something. I think it's a specific festival.
But it's
Y-
that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it has like again, it's not something like you didn't name them the penguin, which can only have one.
Get that down.
One. There's no way to be like, I love penguins, but
Right.
and why do you make your kid hold a little umbrella and laugh, and why'd you
Why did you
break
put
their
a
feet?
there's a trademark after their name? It's very weird.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, strange things, and you show them video of Danny DeVito every night before they go to bed.
Constant make them wear makeup. It's very weird.
Yeah, and you got them enrolled in an organized crime
Right. You went
thing.
very I think that's too much.
You make them wear a suit, and you had another kid who named it Batman, and they're fighting each other all the time.
Constantly fighting.
Clearly, that's they had a plan there that Laurel
Right.
necessarily does not.
Right.
Well, I mean, so you like the name Laurel? It sounds like just on the face of it, it's an all
It's
right name.
it's a unique name, but it's not like off the rails weird in that way. It's a
Yeah,
real name.
if somebody said to me, "My name's Laurel," I'd be like, "Cool," or
And
and they could go by Lore or Laura for short or something.
I also wouldn't like think like instantly in my head I'm like, "Oh, it's not a comic name."
Oh, for
It's
sure,
not,
yes.
cuz this is like I was, you know it more, but it is like a deeper dive into the lore of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, like I said, it's not even a first name. Like
Right.
it's a middle
Right.
name.
So yeah, me
Uh,
personally wouldn't be upset about it. I would be more like they decided on this name together.
mhm.
They
From
chose
supposedly a big list.
right. So that means there was probably months of conversation going back and forth. So like it's not like he or she went to the hospital and just wrote down on the paperwork, "Laurel, here you go." Like they knew the name going into it.
Yeah, it maybe it is a little weird. Like he says, he thought maybe he mentioned it or it just slipped his mind. But you would kind of think that he would, you know, that would come up. Like he would mention where he heard it at some point, and maybe he did. And in all the excitement and the commotion, it just got lost in the shuffle.
Now let me ask you this question. There's
Sure.
a list of names on a whiteboard and you're naming your child. Wouldn't you do a quick Google search?
Yeah, but I want. I mean, if you Google Laurel right now, do you think Black Canary is going to come up?
That's true.
I don't think she is.
Or wouldn't
That's
you ask your partner like, "What is this from?" Because you also want to make sure it's
hmm.
like not one of his exes. Like, we don't know these people.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Now,
Now, yeah.
there is more to this story,
Is there?
isn't
Is
there?
there?
With
Well,
did
there's
we
kind of the resolution of it.
did we mention the aunt?
Yeah, we mentioned the ant. The ant was at the time almost the ant was really the catalyst for all of this because the wife was surprised, but the ant seemed to be really the one. At least the way I'm interpreting it, it sounds like perhaps the wife was more upset that it was upsetting her relatives and that it was like kind of embarrassing.
Now, let me ask you this question.
Mhm.
Two partners had baby, named child. Aunt came in, started like stirring the pot and like
Mm.
kind of starting shit between the two the couple like, "Oh,
Boot her
that's a
out.
That's a weird name. Do you think any family members have any say over anything while you two are raising a child?
No, I mean, definitely not. I
Right.
mean, I would absolutely say this aunt is
Like
maybe a little out of line.
overstepping some boundaries. Like if she came in and was like, "Oh, you named your child what? What?" Like
Right. Yeah, no, even like I don't care if the kid's name is like the wife a little bit has a right to maybe be potentially upset. The aunt, it's like mind your own business. What do you care what the kids where the name came from?
that's why I feel
That's
like the
absurd.
aunt's coming in and she's like she's starting something.
Yeah, no, that's
She's like
fair.
and like even unless the only reason that a person should like any family member or any person should come in is if like the child was in danger.
Yeah,
But like
if
other
their
than
name
that,
was Fire and
or whatever the guy from Tesla named his child.
now I guess what did he name his child? Elon Musk?
It was like a Q, a hashtag symbol. Like it was something ridiculous.
Celebrities really do things differently, don't they?
They're a little, broken.
I was gonna say now there may be one exception to learning the origin of a name if it's like, yeah, he's named after the founder of the Ku Klux Klan.
Right. Then you
That,
go,
there are some name origins that are potentially worth getting upset over.
but even if I was just going back to being in the shoes of the partner, like it is the partner's fault. Both partners should have like communicated this. Like this was a lack of communications on both sides. Like
Sure, but I think you got to give him a little slack because how much stuff is going on in your
right.
life while you're having a kid. You know what I mean? Like it can be very hectic.
But it
It
seems like they were putting like a lot like they had a whiteboard. There was like they were
Yeah,
crossing out. It wasn't like,
yeah.
the wife yes, she has a lot of stuff going on baby inside of her situation, but that's how I call it, baby inside you situation. That's what pregnancy is.
I think the doctors say that I am sorry, ma'am. According to these results, you have baby
Ooh,
inside you
you
situation.
you should see a doctor. Oh, wait.
Yeah,
But, like, question it a little bit, but whatever, that's neither here nor there. Um,
might be there.
but yeah, I don't like I like the name.
Yeah, it's a nice name. Well, here's the thing. So the way that they resolved this, according to the posting, is that they called the aunt. Romeo apologized to her and said he was just joking, and that the name was actually based on this like ancient Greece stuff, and that was what like settled the situation and got him back in the wife's good graces. Was that but and I don't know. I mean, this may have just been a thing of like, let's just placate the crazy aunt who just we don't want to have this come up at every dinner for the rest of our lives.
Right.
Just tell her it's from something else because let's otherwise we'll never hear the end of it. That
Well,
I
what
understand.
would you do that in this situation, or would you just ignore it? 'Cause
I'm
I know your personality.
I
Like,
mean,
I
I'm
feel
an
like you would just
obstinate, stubborn man.
but then I
Yeah,
would also
no.
feel like you would just, just not pick up the phone anymore.
Well, if it was me, I feel like it would be the day one, the Instagram post would tell you who they were named after.
Right.
Like, I wouldn't be in this situation because if I were gonna name after, even if it was like a somewhat more obscure or middle ground pop culture character, I'd let you know. I think
Well, because you
I'd
would
be proud
also
of it.
have you'd have pride behind it. You'd be like,
Yeah,
"Hey, they're from this." It wouldn't just be like, "Oh, I liked it. I saw it here." Like,
which is kind of what the situation is more like, I think.
but like I
So
wouldn't bend over backwards for this ant though.
yeah,
That's
but
where
I
like
It's
I don't
there.
know.
I think. I mean, I might be in your shoes, but there is a point from a rational perspective where you just go, just be the person. Who cares? Just let the ant be happy, so you don't have to fight about it. They're wrong, but like whatever, you
It's
know.
also like how much is she in your life too? Like,
Yeah,
is it only
that's
like you see her on Thanksgiving, she's gonna bring it up, be like, "Fine, it's crazy aunt, whatever."
right. If they live next door and they're babysitting the kid or
Right.
something,
That's something right.
that could be another situation. They just start calling the kid something else they like
Yeah,
better.
I could see that happening too.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. What do you think? verdicts, final verdicts.
Yeah, we should get into the final verdicts. You
I, f-
want
I,
to
f- yeah, I feel that I've said most of what I need to say here.
right.
Uh, this feels fairly cut and dry to me, although there are the guilt. I'm a little bit less clear on the guilt of the other parties in this story, being the wife and the aunt. They may or
Mhm.
may not have shades of guilt or innocence to them. But while Romeo himself, I think if he's guilty of anything, it's perhaps carelessness. But the act itself of giving this child this name, I do not think was done with malicious intent.
Right.
And therefore, and I think it's a perfectly reasonable, acceptable name. Therefore, I personally declare Romeo not guilty.
I 100% agree with you. This wasn't an obscure name. It wasn't anything crazy. It does have ties to other things in history. It's not like it was a completely made up name. It wasn't like a product name. It wasn't, like I said, Apple. Like, it wasn't anything crazy. Sure, it's a name that you're not going to be able to get like a keychain for when you go to like the boardwalk or, something like that. But it's not, yeah, there should have been a little bit more communication between the two of them, especially when it's something this big. But not guilty.
Yeah, it would almost he would even be less guilty, I think, if the name were something like Superman. Because it's like,
Right.
well, how did you not know? But I don't
Right.
think he was trying to sneak it in. That I think that's the sticking point. I don't think he was doing this to be underhanded.
Right, because like if it was a name that was so weird, then he would have to have some kind of story to it. But they picked a name, the child was given the name, and no one really noticed it was something weird until she was like, "Hey, what's this from?" And
Right. So it sounds like we need to punish the aunt. I think she's the one who's really
yep.
the impetus for this wrongdoing. So we need to decide her sentencing. I mean, I already know I want to legally have her name changed to Khaleesi.
I think she should have to read all the comics so she
Mm.
knows the lore.
The Laurel lore.
The Laurel. And
I like that. I like that.
I think she needs to change her name to like question mark. Just
Question mark?
just a question
There
mark.
there is a DC character called the Question.
Oh, there you go. Or she has to change her name to Yanny.
Thank you. I'm glad somebody finally had the balls to say it.
Right. She has to
Change,
say Yanny, which is
change.
I'm saying the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Yanny.
Same thing as what? That's what the kid was named, Laurel.
Right. Right. Yanny. You're right.
Exactly. So that would be great, and then she can wear a blue and gold dress or something.
Right.
No
That's
one, no. Does anyone even remember this reference?
nope.
It's completely gone. What do you know about
Exactly.
Green Needle and Brain something?
Is is that like that you hear it
Yeah,
said? It's one of those things.
it's an
Which those
audio
are like
clip.
it's actually really interesting because it's whatever you read, your brain hears. But
Yeah, yeah.
whatever.
Wild stuff. Wild
It
stuff.
is.
There you have it. Those are our verdicts and sentencing decisions, which are final. But we would also still be interested to hear your thoughts if they align or differ from ours on today's case. You can email us and let us know what you think at geeksontrial@gmail.com. That's also where you can go to submit your very own case. If you have a geeky dispute that needs to be settled, let us know about it, and you may be featured on a future episode. You can also use a form that we've made. You can find a link to that form in the episode description.
And please help us support the show. You can head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/geeks on trial. And a free way to help us promote the show, head on over to the Apple iTunes podcast shop store and give us a 5-star rating. And that way we can be in people's ears all over the world.
That's our aim, is to get global ear coverage.
Global
Uh,
ear coverage.
you can also follow our personal other projects that we have going on. Follow me on Twitter at Quentz, and you can also find a lot of my stuff at jonathanestis.com, my newsletter, other videos, things like that.
and I review snacks on YouTube. That's youtube.com/the snack guy. And until next time, I'm Ivan Hahn.
I'm Jonathan Estes.